Hello, Outrageous! Welcome back to another episode of Outrageously Me, a podcast for outcasts and a note to self. This is all of me, your host Sri, and today it's going to get a little bit techie. I have here with me my best friend and somebody who I look up to when it comes to product management. And in his own words, he loves creating things people find delights with. So he's a software developer for 20 years and a product manager and leader for past 13 years. He's a university instructor, he's a product management coach, he's a startup advisor, speaker, podcaster, and an author. Oh my god, I don't even know how he finds time to do all of those things. Welcome today, Moshe, for the podcast.
Hey Sri, thank you for having me. And I can tell you, I also don't know how I can find time for all of these things.
On top of that, you have three beautiful daughters as well.
I
I don't
know.
even know where to begin. Okay, first of all, let me ask you this. This is something that I ask all of my guests.
Mhm.
What does outrageously me means to you?
Oh, that's such a good question. What it means to me, it really means, and I think I'm much more equipped to say what it means to me at my age after doing so many things. If you would ask me this question 20 or 30 years ago, I would have no clue really. But I think it's about doing what I love doing, but understanding what is it that I love to do, and based on that, doing these things.
I see. I see. Doing what you love to do.
Mhm.
That's the simple and yet very profound explanation for being outrageously oneself. Because when we do things that we really, really love, it's just an expression of our truest self.
Mhm.
And I think you got there really beautifully, and I really like that. And you've been product management coach for several years now, and you talk to a lot of founders. You see a lot of products, and as
Mhm.
everybody know, products have their own life. You know, they have a persona, they have a unique selling point, they have use cases, and just like a person, the product also exists in this realm of virtual reality.
Mhm.
So, how do you see products? Do you see them as different personas? Do you see them as brands? Do you see them as inanimate objects which has no meaning? How do you see them?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I will say for every question you ask me today, that's a very good question. Uh, so products to me is really, and I'm focusing my career on digital products. So of course there is many products out there. Most of the products we interact with are actually physical products, right? But
Yes.
because my background in software development, that's really my focus, digital products. And to me, they're tools. They're really tools to help people, to help our life being better. Now,
I
a tool
see.
can be a good thing and a tool can be a bad thing. But you can have the same tool used for either, it's not the tool itself, it's how you use the tool, right? So a knife, you can cut, vegetables, you can create salad, you can nourish yourself, or you can do other things with a knife. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. I love the definition. It's very simple and it's very clean. It's a tool. It's a tool. That's what it is. Although we make products to be something they are not because they are integrated into our lives, right? So without some of the software products that we use, we don't even know how our life would be. For example, we are using Riverside today to record this podcast. It has become a part of our routine right now. So
hmm,
that's what makes it interesting.
yeah.
So today's exploration, Moshe, with you, I want to find out what are the different ways in which a product management principles can be applied to oneself
Hmm.
to embark on the journey of self identity and uniqueness, and also how can it help me to be more of myself.
Hmm.
That's the journey we are embarking today.
Let's
And
go.
yeah, I want to start with a vision. Like, every product has a vision, unique selling point, and how can it be applied to self identity and how we differentiate ourselves in our unique qualities and skills and values, and how do we define that? So,
Hmm.
how can you relate these two things? The one with value proposition and unique selling point for the product, and to the one with our own value of self identity, skills, and unique qualities.
Yeah, so I always look at products, or sorry, let me start again. I always look at trying to do anything that I do in life as almost as a product, because when I
Mm.
work on a product, I'm trying not to be emotionally connected to it, so it's easier when you're not emotionally connected to something. You're observing it from the outside, and then all the skills that I learned throughout the years, on how to create a product and how to even envision the product and move toward that goal, to try to apply it to other things as well. So the same thing is also, it could be just a project I do at home, or it could be if I write something, like I write a book, or it
You
could,
wrote a book.
yes, I try to treat that also as a product.
You
Or
did.
yes, I mean, it is a product, of course. At the end of the day, people consume it like, other products. But this is a fictional book, and when you write fiction, it's an art, and you're connected to it in so many levels that you fall in love with it, and it's very hard to detach yourself from it and really get real feedback. So that's what I
Mm.
try to do. So the same thing also with my career, or with when I'm trying to help to mentor other product managers, and coach them towards where do they want to be in their career. I'm looking to see, okay, so what are their values? What is valuable to them? What is not valuable to them? And what defines success for them? And based on that, try to align this with and create a strategy. So how do I
Mm.
get to that success, and how will I be able to measure this success? All of these are things that come in, very naturally from product management, and they should come naturally also for other things like that.
So when you talk about self-expression, such as writing a book, it's such a creative process. You have characters, you said it's a fictional book. And so there's a lot of creativity that goes into writing a book. And when
Yeah.
you treat it as a product, then when you have product management, it's clean cut, right? So there are no room for uh, different way of expressing something. It's just,
Mhm.
when you have a product, you have to do A, B, C, D, and then you have to do them for the success of the product.
Mhm.
So, but when also you think about self identity, skills, and personal values, it's more to do with creativity than to be with process and things to follow. So, how do you see them interacting with each other since you have used it for your book?
Yeah, there are processes for sure. So I wanted to make sure that I learn, from other people, from other authors, and I took classes to learn the craft. But and that's where I want to look at when you write a book, you have to read it and read it and read it until you get tired of your own words. You want to have this different paths of reading, that you're saying, okay, now I'm reading it as this type of person, or now I'm reading it as that type of person. Sometimes it will be myself, as I'm the author and I want to convey a specific message. Sometimes it will be as the readers, and maybe different type of readers even, to say, do I really understand what he tried to say here? Does he tell me too much and I'm not enjoying it anymore because I'm being fed, or is there still some mystery there? So things
Hmm.
like that. And this is the same as when you build a product. You have to think about the persona of the users that are going to use it. Do they understand, what the product is about? Can they navigate the product? Do they find the value? Does it solve a problem to them specifically? So there are
Hmm.
very, very a lot of similarities there. But you're right. Creative process is a very demanding and also very personal thing, and that's where you have, maybe because it took me 8 years to do. It helps me to put it aside for a little, then get detached from it for a bit. So that could be another idea there. How do you detach yourself from your own creation to be a bit
Hmm.
more um, not so much in the weeds, in the details, but more of higher level, and really create a feedback loop for yourself.
Feedback loop for yourself. So when you started talking about outrageously me and what it means to you, you said it's the thing that we love to do. So, and then when we talk about writing a book, of course, this is something that you really like to do. And product management coaching, that is also something you really like to do. These two are an expression of your self. and these are the things you really, really like to do. So, but when it comes to detaching yourself from work, that is one thing you talked about. These are two different extremes. One is something where you pour yourself into your
Mhm.
work, and you also talked about detaching yourself from the work. So,
Mhm.
how do you see that applies to you in the terms of identifying yourself, like self identity, and propagating your qualities outside the world, outside to the world?
Yeah. So there are two things for myself, and that's what I encourage everyone to do: is to find what is valuable to them and what they like to do. For myself,
Mm,
the two things I like doing is creating on one hand and making value for people. So, what is going to be valuable for someone? Are they going to be happy with this or not? So, some of it, the why behind it is that I like making people happy. And when
mm,
people are happy, it makes me happy as well. So, uh, everything that I do kind of has this thread in there that I'm creating something. So I'm creating a product with a team that I'm working with. It's not just me, or I'm creating a book or whatever it is that I'm creating. And then there is also the people that are going to use it. Is that going to help them? Is it going to create value to them? Right?
mm,
So I realized this over a long time. In the beginning of my career, it was really hard for me to understand that. And then
mm,
once in a while, I understood more of these things. So these two things, creativity was something I always liked, but
mm.
making people happy was a bit more personal than on the business side. And also, in some ways, I was putting myself down a bit because it was always about the other people rather than
Ah, I see, I see.
yeah,
People pleasing.
people pleasing exactly. So over the years, I learned how to make it that it's not just for them; it's also for me because I
Mm,
really enjoy it, and I truly enjoy when someone is getting value. So it's not just about them; it's also about me. But also, weaving this with the creativity and creating new things is really something I find pleasure in.
wow, that's
Um,
really nice. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, you were about to
so
add something.
that's just to close that answer. That's really the things that I'm looking at. So if I feel that I'm getting bored with something, I would like, okay, so am I creative enough, and am I
Mm,
creating value to people to make them happy? And
mm.
if one of those is no, then probably I have to change something.
Oh, that's a two checkpoints that you have. Like, are we creating value and is it making people happy? So if
Yeah,
these two collide, then you're happy with doing whatever you're doing. That's
exactly,
fantastic.
exactly.
So you talked about people and people pleasing, which is probably one of the most important aspect of product management discipline itself, like stakeholder management and making sure you get the feedback from the people, and also to make sure that what is a specific segment of audience that you're serving when it comes to product management,
Yeah.
and how that discipline of stakeholder management can be applied to us as an individual to effectively manage and create relationship where our self identity is kept intact and is also being appreciated. How do you see that?
Yeah. So again, having those two things in mind all the time. With product management and stakeholders, that's a huge topic that we can talk for hours on. And there is a sense of pleasing people, but we really have to look at it very differently. It's not about people pleasing because then we get nowhere. We will say
Hmm.
yes to everyone for whatever they want, and then there will
Hmm.
always be clashes, and we'll not be able to prioritize things and really create value.
So I
So
understand even in product management, people pleasing doesn't help.
exactly, exactly. It's not about people pleasing, because then you will want to please everyone and then you please no one. It's more
Hmm.
about people alignment. So you align everyone to the same vision and the same goals. And then once people are aligned to this, you have a much easier way to show them that few things are aligned with this and other things are not aligned with that. And therefore, if you have issue with the alignment, that's a bigger issue than if you don't please them. But once you align with that, you will be able to please them on the things that align with that, right?
Hmm.
So that creates a much better balance.
Yeah, so it's almost as if like a product has a specific persona that it wants to have a value that it wants people to be aligned with, and you as a person also have a specific persona, and you may not be relatable to everybody, but there would be certain people that your values will be aligned to, and they would appreciate you for who you are. And that's exactly finding the right audience is the common element between these two. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one point, but you're also bringing something to the surface there, because there are many different product managers with different personas. Not everyone in product management is like me, right? So I'm a very specific type of person, and that's one of those things that, on one hand, we need to understand and to build these relationships with stakeholders and create alignment. On the other end, we have to use what we are powerful at and what is our strength to make that happen. So some people have better strength in relationship creation, or some in communication, or some in socializing, or some in data-driven decisions. So there are many different types of things we're strong at. I think that we all have to identify what we're strong at. We try
Right.
to use that because we have that strength, but not to forget that there are other ways to do it. So sometimes also get out of our comfort zone if needed, because the stakeholders might be a very different type of person as well.
It's almost as if saying that the outrageously me, the self identity, and being oneself is definitely different for different people. It's different for me. It's different for you. It's about you, who you are as a person, and what values you want to proclaim to the world, and who you want to align with, and who do you find ways to provide value to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly the product management discipline, as you said about different product managers, also says. So it's kind of, I see a lot of similarities and a lot of synergy in speaking about these topics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too, absolutely. And one of the things that always intrigue me with your podcast and with the title of the podcast is that most of us don't really know who we are, and we just
Mm.
try to fumble around. If we don't know who we are, it's a much harder position to do anything. Product management is even harder, I would say. It's hard as but that's also one of those things we have to consider about our stakeholders when we talk with them. They don't necessarily know who they are. So they might think that they're X, but they're actually Y because of different reasons, right? Or they might not bring out to the surface because they play specific games or whatever that is. So we need to be sensitive to those things and see how we can I don't know if help them with the right thing, because
Yeah.
we're not a psychologist, but it's more about how do we maneuver around it, or how do we use their strength, because everyone has strengths. So identifying their strength and use them to help them help us.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point. You said many people don't know who they are. And, I also speak to a lot of founders. We work together. And
Mm-hmm.
when we speak to a lot of founders who have a startup and they have a specific idea for a product, sometimes we also see them that they are not very sure about the specific product's ideation or specific product's unique value.
Mm-hmm.
They might be all over the place, right? So can you walk me through the product management discipline? What would you do when you're working with such founders who has a product but there is no clear unique vision of who they are or what the product is?
Yeah, I first try to focus on what is the problem you're trying to solve.
Mm.
And there is always the question of why are you trying to solve this problem, and why, and getting really to the root cause of that. There
Mm.
is a very simple way to do that. It's the 5 whys. You always ask another why like 5 times until you get to a much deeper root cause. The in
The
some
five whys you're talking about is what, when, who, how, why not, and also are are those things you're talking
No,
about?
basically why. You always ask why. It's the same question.
Oh,
Why?
it's the same question. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So if you're asked someone, why, I actually, I have an example for you, right?
Okay, go
So
ahead. Interesting.
the example is not so much from the founder perspective, but more from even my own perspective in the past when I was laid off. So the question was like, I've been laid off and I can't find a job, right?
Okay.
So you ask why, And maybe the answer is, oh, many of my skills are only for a specific job, so I don't have another skill, right? So then you ask why. And you answer, oh, maybe I specialize in a niche technology. So the technology is, the skills are in this technology. So you ask another why. So why are you only this technology? Oh, maybe because it took me a long time to learn it, and this was my comfort zone. So you ask why, and you're like, oh, maybe I'm afraid to get out of my comfort zone. So you ask why. So then you get to, oh, I'm worried I'm too old to learn something new. So when you get to this
Cool.
behavioral,
Yeah.
yeah, you can actually find out maybe new directions how to solve this problem, because it's not a problem necessarily about finding a job. It's a problem about afraid of doing something new, or being afraid of not being too old, of being too old to do something new. So,
Yeah.
so the same thing I would say to those founders, to really go try to understand the why behind their trying to do something. Sometimes they will have a very clear reasoning that they will find it, and from that reasoning, they will be able to say, okay, now I can do some action items to that. But some of them might say, oh, because I want to be rich, or whatever. And
Yeah.
and if you ask them a reason why they want that, they might say other reasons behind that. I want security. I always want to be able to do X and Y and Z and stuff like that. And maybe there are other ways to get there, not necessarily build something no one will use or and waste their money on that.
That's
But
fantastic. I really like that example. This is so clear cut. Like when
Mhm.
somebody is working on themselves and self identity and who they are and what they want to do in life, all they have to do is ask why. How simple is that? And
when
get
I'm yeah,
yeah,
when
go
I'm
ahead.
standing in front of my students, the first class, the first slide that I show them after introducing myself, I'm asking them, what's the most important question? And the only answer is why.
Mm,
Because without the why, you really don't. You do things, just because. You do things because of someone told you to do it. But if it's not because of you, or it's not because you understand really the reasons behind it, then what's the point?
yeah. And you also talked about another important aspect, like there may be more than one way of going about it. And often when we are in the path to self-identity, self-realization, and knowing what our superpowers are and leaning into the superpowers, we often get stuck with semantics of it. We often get stuck with certain roadblocks, and we think that, oh, this is it, this is where I stop, this is where it's going to end for me, and there is no other approach to this. But your answer was very clear. There are all more than one way of doing something.
Hmm.
So if you're getting stuck on certain level, maybe perhaps we have to look at the problem differently, ask ourselves these why questions and navigate it in a way that we can get through that in another direction. And that's exciting and as well as very reassuring for me, because the path to self identity or being 100% yourself is not so easy. It's not a path that many people would take.
Yes.
It's not
Yeah.
a path that people would want to also embark with ease, because there is so much to navigate and so much unknown, and in
Mhm.
every step of the way you will find some sort of a problem that you need to solve. So that takes us to the next question, the problem solving.
Yeah.
Product management specifically has certain ways that you can solve a problem. And can you tell me how you can apply that in different areas of life, even to our own self?
Yeah. So the first thing about product management and product solving is that it's not mutually exclusive. So it means that you don't necessarily hire a product manager to solve problems, because the solving the problem can come from many different places.
Yeah.
And it's actually more important to understand the problem you want to solve. So that's where the point of view we like to say. In other areas in life, the what five whys is one of those things. Other things is like asking for help, so you don't have to do it on your own.
Hmm.
Doing baby steps, so start with the things you know and easy for you to do, and then go. So iterate on it and build your strength and
I
create.
think people should write this down. This is fantastic. Always ask for help.
Mhm.
Take baby steps. These two are wonderful. And write down your vision or something. That would be your third step. Go on.
Absolutely. And I think throughout all of these, the important thing is that it's very hard for us to do it on our own because it's hard for us to see inside versus seeing other people. You know
Mm,
how sometimes it's so easy to see how another person behave or do something or say something, and you're like, oh, this is so wrong or this is so this. But when we do it, it's really, really hard to identify. So
mm,
asking for help, that's one of those things. It's not just ask for help for the things you don't know. So, but it's also ask for help to identify what is it that you have to work on. Coaching is one way to do that. Therapy is another way to do that. But there are many, many different ways to do that. But in general, those are the things that, as product managers, we never want to be alone in this, and we can't
mm.
be alone in that. So the problem solving is really a team sport.
Wow, that's definitely wonderful. And I'm trying to navigate from the beginning of the podcast to here. And if I can summarize wonderfully, like
Mhm.
outrageously me, if one person is on this journey of outrageously me, from the product management principles, it all starts with, as you rightly said, doing what you love. That's the first step. And you may want to ask why you're doing something. Asking why is actually very, very important. And then when you are embarking on that, you have to know that there are more than one ways of doing it. So you try doing it in different ways, and also asking for help, because as a single person, you cannot do it alone. And it's very difficult for you to see internally than how you see others and external things. So
Yeah.
asking for help and taking those baby steps and writing your vision down, and involving other people in your journey, and that's fantastic. And if I can summarize all of that, it suddenly forms the guidebook of how you can apply product management principles to be 100% yourself and outrageously yourself,
Good.
and how
We
you
should
can
write that
utilize
book.
that.
We should write that book.
Yeah, we should write that book. We can co-author that book, and
Yeah.
I bring in the values from the personal and the self-identity perspectives and authenticity perspectives, and you bring in the values from product management coaching, problem
Exactly.
solving, people
Exactly.
pleasing, all those perspectives. One last question I want to ask you is that a product, after it goes live or it goes to use for other people, it doesn't stop there. There is always a continuous loop of feedback and getting improved and things like that. So how do you connect that to self identity and authenticity and becoming more and more of ourselves? Like, do you think taking the feedback helps in becoming our truest version?
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. I think that life is a lifelong journey. So
Mm,
learning about ourselves and improving ourselves is a lifelong journey. Because we change perspective. The context where we are is changing all the time. The family we are is growing up. We're moving places. The world is changing around us. So it's definitely something we always have to be on top of, and for that we need that feedback. Now, feedback
mm,
connects with what we said before about other people telling us about ourselves, so that's part of that feedback.
yeah.
With product, it's easy because product doesn't have, product is an object that doesn't have any voice. The voice will be the users that are using it.
Mm,
And as product managers, if we are tuned to our users, we have to listen to them. We have to see how they use it. We have to see what is it they use, they don't use, they like, they don't like. And there's
mm,
a very bottom line there, the success of the product, the scaling of the company, and the ROI that we're trying to bring, right? It's revenue at the end of the day.
mm,
So it's kind of easy for us to understand it in the business world, as product people, that we have to do these things. When it comes to ourselves, we can also say, like, we have to separate ourselves from, don't get offended by the feedback.
yes. Very important.
It's not for offending us. So can we be also a bit of an object that don't care about if it's a good feedback or not? Remind ourselves all the time. I keep reminding myself all the time why I'm getting feedback, and
Mm,
that every feedback is, has value. Um, Knowing how to give feedback is also important, and I learned it throughout the years. There is many good people that know how to give feedback are actually coming from the creative world, artists and authors, because when they learn art, they
Yeah.
learn how to give critique.
Mm.
So, and one of the things they're telling, and I've done it, through art school and through writing school. They tell us start with the good things, so make sure the person know all the good things, and then also include the things that are not necessarily bad, but they can improve on. And
Mm.
be nice about it. We live in Canada, so we have to be nice. We can't be
Even
blind.
otherwise, we should be nice, but yeah,
No,
being
I
in
know.
Canada
Everyone
adds an
needs to
extra
be
layer.
exactly. Everyone needs to be nice about it. But um, if I hear feedback from someone that is not in my style, or I feel like, oh, my ego is going to be really hurt by their feedback, I remind myself, this is them, it's not me. This is the way they communicate, it's not me. I can
Yeah,
take it or leave it, but if I take it, maybe I will grow from this feedback.
fantastic.
Yeah, so there is a lot of those nuances also about how to get feedback, and then what to do with the feedback, and improving ourselves all the time, because it's important.
Mm. And I really like that feedback is a lifelong learning, right? Like as you grow and as you work through situations, the identity of yourself keeps changing, and that's what is interesting. Also, your product changes. Also, your product evolves over the period of time, and you also evolve as a person over a period
Exactly.
of time. And
Exactly.
feedbacks helps you do that, and feedbacks helps you get better and better at
Yeah.
your game, and to be more of yourself and to provide more value to people around you. And that's fantastic. Is there
Mhm.
anything else you want to tell our audience who are listening that might help them to be more of themselves?
Um, well, there is always a lot of stuff coming out, but another thing that come to mind is about being humble,
Mm.
and it also go towards how do I accept feedback and stuff like that. But humility is one of those things that I don't know what I don't know, and
Yes,
even the things I think I know, they could be gut feelings, they could be my guesses, they could
yeah,
be unsustainable, they can whatever. So it's always humility is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, and it's about being accepting to other options out there. And those other options could be other ideas, new feedback, new data that contradict what I thought. It could be anything. But that
fantastic.
really can open us up to a much more input from the world.
Wow, that's beautiful. You nailed it all together, Moshe, and it was fantastic. Over the period of time that I spent with you, I've gotten to know you in different facets, and this is one part of you which is very, very beautiful. Is that you're humble, you take feedback, and you also provide feedback,
Thank
and
you.
you're such a nice person to be around with. Thank you so much for being you, and thank you so much for coming onto this podcast today and sharing
Thank
with
you.
all of us as how product management can help us to be more of ourselves. I'm going to put in the description for all the audience as to how they can reach you in LinkedIn and your email address from your LinkedIn profile,
Mhm.
and they can book a one-on-one. I believe you're a person who loves to meet people, as I know.
Absolutely.
And
I do.
is there anything else you want to talk about in this podcast? Like, do you want to say something about being outrageously me, the podcast itself?
The feelings are mutual. I love what you're doing, Strin. I love working with you, and thank you very much for inviting me to share my point of view. I know sometimes the business world can feel very clinical, and how do we apply it to the real world? But I think more and more we see that we are human actually, and it's the real world that have to make the business world much less clinical than it is. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're doing that through the podcast and through being outrageously you. So thank you so much for that, Sri, for being there and being who you are.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning into us. Please leave a comment as how you like the podcast. And if you have any question, feel free to write to me or put it in the comments. And take care, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye.